Okay, so it is Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. I'm doing a short video here on Revelation 9 and locusts from the pit and what it all means, kind of, and how I see it all. So basically, I came to the realization that Revelation 9, of course, has to do with our contemporary big time, or our future more like it, but our contemporary is kind of, leading us there. So anyway, we'll get right to it. So in Revelation 9, we have, it says, then the fifth angel sat, and the fifth angel has to do with, perhaps fifth age of humanity. Has to do with the statue of Daniel. So fifth age of humanity being iron and clay kingdom, kingdom of transhumanism, kingdom of tech mixed with flesh. So anyway, and the next line goes, and I saw a star falling from heaven to the earth. To him was given a key to the bottomless pit. So what that's kind of suggesting is, rather than suggesting, it's suggesting perhaps a star influenced a person on the planet Earth, or on the flat plane. But when it refers to bottomless pit, it's actually, I believe, referring to a bottomless server farm, because right now they have unlimited computing power, being the D-Wave and other quantum computers can equal 0 and 1 at the same time. So the problem is storing that computing power and how to get it stored on a place where you can have unlimited data or unlimited storage in addition to unlimited computing power. So if you have those two, like you have RAM, let's say you have unlimited memory in your computer like RAM, or you also have unlimited processor power, like faster than any silica-based chip or any traditional computer that runs off of transistors and or silica. It's faster than anything like that. So what they might do is try to find a way to store zero and the atoms in this quantum computer equals 0 and 1 at the same time. So what they might try to do is find a way to store 0 and 1 at the same time, and then that would be unlimited storage unlimited storage capacity. And so it could be a bottomless server farm, a bottomless pit of a server farm. And so that's one way of looking at it, and they can have data on basically everyone and everything here with a bottomless pit of a server farm. And why do I think that the bottomless pit is actually a massive server farm or a never-ending server farm that has unlimited space? Is because, right now we have the first part of it, we got unlimited computing power. It's just really a problem of making that computing power compatible with this reality, because they have problems making D-Wave practical for applications on the flat plane. They have problems with getting the data from the computer into something that can be read kind of decently. They have a little bit of trouble with it right now. And so they'll revamp it and they'll get things rolling again and get things better with that, so they have less trouble with it, with reading the output from it. And so they have that aspect to it. So all they need now is a bottomless pit server farm. And why is the bottomless pit a server farm? Is because it is in a server farm, in order to be with hell has to do with something that's anti-God and anti-Christ. And Christ was both perfect man and perfect God. And therefore, the bottomless pit has to do something that is mostly technology and something where God cannot dwell in. And God cannot dwell in something that's technological. Things that God's not imprinted on, God cannot dwell in, therefore. So it's something that God can't dwell in, which would be a bottomless pit of a server farm. Is what I'm trying to get at here. God can't dwell there, because God's also printed on the human anatomy, as Enter the Stars and so on shows. So is Lucifer as well printed on the human anatomy, but God is as well. And so because of this, you would think that the server farm would have things to do with would be antichrist-like in its nature, and that it would be anti-human, is what I'm trying to get at here. It would not have anything to do with humanity. It would have something to do with technology. And in order to get to a place where you would have a server farm that's bottomless, it would take, I don't even know what it takes. They haven't developed the technology yet to have unlimited RAM capacity or unlimited hard drive capacity, because the hard drives right now only write so much, server farms only write so much. And so maybe they would develop a version of a quantum computer that could store stuff too as well, because if you have 0 and 1 at the same time, you know, you have to just find a way to basically get that 0 and 1 stored somewhere. And one way of storing that somewhere is to maybe create an artificial magnetic field to store it, and then have that magnetic field store 0 and 1 at the same time, which is a possible way of doing it, is making your own sort of magnetic field that's different than this magnetic field. That's the only idea I can really get at how you'd have a bottomless pit server farm. But that's just off the top of my head, and I'm not so sure if that would work and how practical that is. So anyway, okay, so it says here, we'll read the rest. And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. And that could be the smoke, of the production facilities below there, because the production facilities will produce the locusts, as you'll see in the later lines. And the smoke is also the pollution that's produced from creating such massive amounts of technology. And so the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. And exactly, yeah, technology would darken the earth a bit. There's a possibility of that, but there's also a possibility that the sun times out, which is why the sun gets darkened in the end times. It's a long story about that, but time, it's a long story, but in my last video I covered how time's going to stop. Now, as time starts to stop, you'll have problems with the earth, such as the sun might have the sun is going to be linked to the magnetic field that starts to die out here, and so therefore the sun might time out eventually. But the sun has like a tokamak reactor. It's a big tokamak reactor, so it's a floating tokamak reactor. So it has a time limit on it, and it might be linked to the Access Mundi magnetic field and dependent on it, because how else can you contain light? I mean, the light and the heat that the sun gives off has to be contained with the magnetic field. So when the magnetic field starts to fail, as the lava flows to the surface, the magnetic field will fail, and the sun will start to blacken and darken because the sun will start to fail. Okay, so everything starts to fall apart when the lava flows to the surface, and when basically you start to have you'll start to have other failures too. You'll start to have like atoms floating around, and you'll start to have things falling apart or freezing outright. These are just the theories I have from the last video I have that you can watch, which is the Access Mundi Part 4 series, and we'll read the rest of it. And then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the power. Oh, there we go, I messed up the line. We'll just read that again. And then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but only those men who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days, men will seek death and not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them. Okay, so what that basically means is that the locusts from the pit are kind of like the locusts that come from the bottomless server farm that has data gathered on everybody. And the data has gathered on people is to basically police them and make sure that they're in line with the regime, and that they're obeying, and that they're doing, with the things they should be doing. And that's why the locusts don't kill them. They're kind of set to stun. They're police bots, but they're set to stun, and they're set there to torment them. Okay? And they're also, the locusts could be with the AI traveling around right now, screwing with everybody and tormenting them. The AI is literally tormenting people here and there, and that's kind of also a form of locust too. But this locust might also be either a kill bot or a stun bot that's designed to do such, mostly stun in this case is what's saying here. And it's also saying, notice how that the locusts are not to, these bots, these robots are not to harm the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree. And that's also the green agenda of UN Agenda 21. They don't harm the environment. And so they only go for men who don't have the seal of God on their foreheads. Now what that means is that they're only going to police the people who took the mark, and who took either some form of an advanced vaccine, that maybe not one we have now, but an advanced vaccine that might cancel out your pineal gland antenna. So there's a possibility that those are just people who took the mark, but also says at the end of the line, directly references in Revelation 9:6, the people who took the mark, who would seek to die and can't die because they took the mark. And so you get the gist of it, is that these are kind of like, these are stun bots that are there to police the population, that come from a bottomless pit of information that's been gathered on every man, woman, child on the flat plane. And so that's what these locusts are that they mention here. And so, let's just see here. And by the way, if I sound funny, it's because I have a mask on right now and I'm in a public place and it's kind of hard to talk with a mask on. And so, and this one directly references a bit in Revelation 9:7, a bit more about them. And so basically they are robots, probably, these locusts. And we'll read this briefly here. The shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men 5 months, and they had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he was the name Apollyon. Okay? So one thing to mention too as well, real quickly, to go back to the last line, is they mention a 55 here in Revelation, the first part of Revelation 9. Let me just find it here. Okay, so they mention 5 a lot in the first part of Revelation 9. So we have the 5th angel up here, if I can highlight that. We have the 5th angel up here, okay, and then we have one more reference to 5 down here. 5 months. It's hard to highlight this. Oh, come on. There we go. It's hard to get the highlighter on the phone working, but it's right there on the bottom there, the 5 months. Okay, so 55 is important because it has to do with Donald Trump, as I stated in my other videos. And so this could have to do with, the beginning of the end, basically, is them bringing about the end. And he's like a bad Don, basically, is what Enter the Stars calls him. And so, so the 55 has to do with the 55th story of Trump Tower. And maybe that's why that's mentioned here. And so it's hard to tell, though, and these things were meant to happen, so we'll see how things go. And so we'll get to the second part here, Revelation 9:7. So the shape of the locust being like horses kind of means that they can move around. They're shaped like the robots that you'd find at Boston Dynamics that are like dogs. They can run around like horses and dogs. And their heads are crowned something like gold. Okay, the faces like men kind of means they're going to look like Terminators type thing. They're going to have faces like men a bit. Crowns like gold means that they probably have like a big light source in their head. Maybe the light source in their head has to do with their computing power. Light source in their head. The crowns are something like gold. Okay, so that probably just means they have bright heads that are turned on, and the bright light inside the head of the locust would probably be part of the computing power of it, because if you can contain the speed of light, maybe in the future they'll have light traveling. Gold here represents light, probably, and it represents light traveling at the speed of light, which, if you can contain it properly down here, you could have something that is that has properties that are like, quasi-permanent. Like, for example, the robot, it could be part of its computing program. Like, it makes it for a faster computer if you can basically find a way to tweak the speed of light and have it contained. What's up above is the speed of light contained as well. Down here we have a similar thing going, but it's time. It's a time loop. It's the speed of light contained in a circle in the atom. And so maybe that their heads are something like crowns of gold. Maybe that has to do with something with the speed of light. I'm just not too sure. But and the faces of men, of course, has to do with the fact that the locusts will look like men, like Terminators almost. They'll be stun bots and or kill bots. Hard to tell, though, what's going to happen, right? So they always change plans. Women's hair, it could be the fact that they look human a bit, or that those are like some form of cilia coming out from the mechanical cilia coming out from the bot. Teeth, sharp teeth has to do with their claws. I mean, if you can get a bot that can climb up a building basically with some claws. It can move around better if it has claws on it. If it can grapple onto things. Breastplates like iron has to do with the fact that things will be plated in graphene, which is very, very hard, or steel. Probably graphene maybe in the future. Graphene's harder than steel, it's lighter than steel. Okay, and the sound of their wings was like chariots, and that has to do with them flying. You know, they fly and it makes a lot of noise. It feels like scorpions. Scorpions also has tails like scorpions, means the weapons that they have has to do with their weapons. And here's another portion of the 5 too, mentioned again, possibly with the 5th age, and their power. It says here that their let me try to highlight that. Their power was to hurt men 5 months, and they're talking about the a bend on there at the end. And so, yeah, basically that's it. That's what the locusts from the pit are, at least in my opinion. So we'll see how far they get to there, and if they can get that far, or they probably will get that far. So we'll see what happens. Okay, anyway, so I hope everyone has a good evening. All right, take care.